We are protectors of this water. We come from the water. We live 9 months in a womb full of water. It is so integral to our beings. We are here to fulfill the 7th generation prophecy and to ensure the future for the next 7 generations. We need your help to stop them. Every single day, starting December 1st, we are asking you to join us.
If we don't stand, it will.
To discourage the construction, to discourage the investors in the Dakota Access Pipeline.
The wind comes in 4 corners, 4 directions, 4 colors. And death rides on 4 horsemen. A black snake with some black tanks. How much money do these companies need to make? They could drop their product, but they wanna save a buck. Already extracted billions, when is enough enough? I used to be in the oil fields, getting paid, but I quit, cause oil water I can't drink. Look down and see Kamimi Ladai in the mud. I looked up and told myself that enough's enough.
Welcome to another episode of Project Sanity. I'll be your host for tonight, Brandon Sutton. We have a jam-packed evening for you. I'm joined tonight by my cohorts, co-hosts, and just fellow Black people. Adair Schmidt, Richard Green. Is that your last name, Richard Green? Anyway, and we're going to be going through this week's events, have a little bit of discussion about them. Oh, and of course, my favorite producer, Dave Conan. Sorry, wow, I'm forgetting everyone's name today. So, to start us off, I believe Rich wanted to have a little bit of a discussion about the ongoing day of action when it comes down to no DAPL. Why don't you come in, Rich? Tell us about that. Turn your mic on first, please. Thank you.
Would probably be helpful. Yeah,
it would.
I mean, I've been seeing a lot of the no DAPL posts and things going on, and seeing some of the news coming out, and we were talking a little bit briefly right before we came on air about some of the most recent updates with Ace Hardware apparently coming out with a statement saying that they're going to be cooperating with the police and authorities by restricting the sales of certain items and who they sell those items regarding when it comes to the DAPL protesters or protectors. And that's one problematic thing. And we also mentioned earlier that there's, as far as supplies and shipments of things that the folks down there at the camp need, those are being restricted or altogether cut off. And we know that we have on the 5th coming up both a bunch of veterans scheduled to arrive at the Standing Rock camp. There's planning on trying to forcefully evict all of these people in some way, I presume more dramatic than they have trying so far with tear gas and rubber bullets and rubber bullet grenades and freezing water in freezing weather and all of the kind of what I see as atrocities going on there already. But from there, I guess I just really I wanted to talk with you guys about and see where you guys were on this as well. So I'm interested. I know Adair probably had something that he wanted to add.
I mean, well, okay, I didn't know if you guys could hear me real quick, but I mean, I'm kind of shocked, honestly, and surprised that the official response from everybody in government has just been, let's watch this play out, right? I mean, can you imagine if this was happening in Iraq or Afghanistan or Saudi Arabia or China even? Could you imagine the U.S. response immediately, or Venezuela, anywhere in South America, really, to something like this happening where government is spraying water in below freezing temperatures on people? There's wind. I mean, there's just the health hazard. The fact of the matter is the sheriff's department of Morton County could have very easily killed any and everybody they sprayed with that water.
Yeah, and which is confounding to the whole, for the safety of the water protectors, we want them to leave. There wouldn't be any threat to their safety were it not for you spraying them with hoses and tear gassing them and shooting them with rubber bullets and sandbags and all the like.
Concussion grenades.
Yes, I'm dumbfounded that more people aren't outraged. So, like, I guess part of me is wondering why do I feel that more Americans aren't more outraged, like just disgusted really with what's going on, I guess.
Well, I think people don't know. I think a lot of people, really don't know. And I think, like you said, a lot of this falls outside of what we consider to be something that happens in America. It just falls outside of that norm. The mainstream media is not informing people about this. They're making it seem as though this is some kind of, I don't know what you call it, like violent protest, or it's just not being reported at all. In terms of how they can treat protesters like this, they've always treated protesters like this. The police have treated protesters like this on more occasions than they have not, as long as they've been either minorities or people without power. So this is no different than the way they treated protesters at Occupy Wall Street, except for the fact that they happen to be in below freezing temperatures, and they happen to have fire. Sorry, they're not using water cannons according to the police. They're using fire hoses, which I don't. And that's what you call a distinction without a difference.
Right.
But this is exactly what happened during the civil rights marches. This is exactly what happened. This is what the police in America do. What is interesting here is that you have both private police and public police. I mean, I guess we call it, and police officers of the peace, who are supposed to be protecting people on the same side, protecting oil interests, and that's where it becomes a very, very dangerous blurring of the line between corporate interest and public good, where it is viewed as the exact same thing for the police to be spraying and blowing people's arms off as that's just the way they help them, if that makes any sense. So we have private police, private security, and public officers deciding that they should work together to protect oil interests over the interest of the people.
Yeah, the private police reminds me that we neglected to mention the sicking dogs on people as one of the just disgusting things that's going on there, and that was the private police or the private security forces that were doing that. I'm at a bit of a loss, and I don't know. Go ahead, there.
I mean, it just kind of is like this. One of the biggest things is, so Brandon mentioned people don't know about it. A lot of people know about this. More people than not know about what's going on down there right now. A lot of people don't care. I actually recently blocked somebody on Facebook because I got so tired of that apologist narrative and an unwillingness to listen without saying, you're just talking about propaganda. Mind you, this is a person without any background in engineering, physics, anything like that. No actual background in the subject matter he's talking about, but is saying these pipelines cannot leak. These pipelines are pipelines are safe. He was like, in their original petition to the court, they didn't once mention pipeline leaks possibly disrupting their water supply. And I'm like, because it's been rerouted. Initially, the only concern was it was going through an actual ancient burial site. It was going through somewhere of cultural and really historical significance.
Yeah,
people are actually making apologist arguments.
I was just going to say, I know recently
TYT
did a video showing or talked about a video that showed drone footage over the camp where it showed that, basically the oil company or the pipeline company was lying about how close they were putting their drilling pad next to the water, and that got exposed. And it's not headline news. I'm not seeing it everywhere else. And I feel
let's talk about this. Let's expand the conversation, because this is also in a way that I've yet to hear this word used in reference to the no DLP. This is police brutality. Yeah, I mean, this is another form of police brutality, and this is
warfare. This isn't brutality. This is warfare.
Yeah, but of course, I mean, this is militarized police force. This is all of those things, and I think that we really need to start having this conversation about the fact that it is not a lack of knowledge, like Adair says. This is not being caused by a lack of people knowing or seeing or not having the access to the media. Like, oh, if only we show enough shootings, if only we show enough X, Y, and Z, people will get it. The people have seen the aftermath of the no DLP, what's going on in North Dakota at the Dakota Access Pipeline. They've seen it, and of course, our quote unquote leaders have come out and said, "Well, I know Obama's come out and said he's just going to let it play out." And but I do want to give I think this is another danger of a Trump presidency, because a lot of people are marching all over America, walking out of their schools and doing big protests because Trump won the presidency. And it's like, where were you guys when someone's arm was blown off at no DAPL? Why aren't you? Because it happened under Obama, it's not a problem. What does Trump has become the scapegoat for so many things, but but these actual problems are just being ignored, and now everyone's putting on safety pins, like because National Day of Talk to Me or whatever. I'm sorry I'm being inarticulate about this, but it's very frustrating to see so many protests being held for Trump, and he hasn't even really. I mean, of course, there is he's energized the portion of America that's not particularly great, and it's very problematic. But regardless, he's energizing private citizens. Apparently, the Obama administration has energized public servants to commit violence on the public and has not condemned that violence. And I'm not seeing the amount of anger towards President Obama, if we're going to use the idea, okay, these people as leaders are the face of the issue. I'm not seeing this anger. I'm not seeing. It's coming across as disingenuous. So I know I'm mixing two things together, so Trump protests and the no DAPL people. But really, I'm seeing that a large portion of the left is intellectually bankrupt and very prone to reactionary gestures of performative activism. But when it comes down to actually engaging with things that are really happening and not just boogeymen and scapegoats, they're it just goes in one ear and out the other.
Well, I want to touch on that actually because you brought up the safety pin thing. Obama's basically a gigantic safety pin for white America to put on their front t-shirt. I hate the safety pins. I hate the idea behind the safety pin. I don't need a safe space to talk to you, stranger in public. I need you, if something's actually happening, to stand up and actively intervene. People at the excuse me, no DAPL protests need actual tangible things. I'm glad people are raising awareness as well, but we need actual tangible things. People need actual help. Marginalized groups, when they're being harassed, attacked, yelled at, belittled, whatever's going on, your safety pin doesn't mean a damn thing unless you get up and actually do something about it. And so that's what Obama is that's Obama to America. Obama's this big safe pin to put on and say, we're so progressive, guys. We elected a black dude.
I wouldn't even
look at us.
I wouldn't even say Obama. Let me interrupt you for a second. I agree with you, but I wouldn't even say Obama's a big safety pin for America. I would say Obama's a big safety pin for neoliberal ideas. Obama puts a really big black face on all of the bad things that America not only does around the world, but America does to its, to its own people, and the things that happened under Obama that he could actually affect. I think the idea that he couldn't actually affect this no DAPL thing is nonsense, right? No one believes that he couldn't literally stop the violence with a snap of his fingers. Like he could. I mean, there might be political payback or a price to be paid, but again, that's just bravery. But what I will say is this comes down to, are we having a conversation about pipelines and the environment and climate change? Or are we having a conversation about minority rights in America, the rights of the poor, the rights of people to be put over profits, the rights of people not to have their police force turn on them in favor of whatever neoliberal agenda is going on? Because a lot of times the conversations around this pipeline are being made being made more about the latter and not about the former. And so far, we've made this a really big conversation about Native Americans and the right to private land, but we also need to be having a conversation about climate change, because this is not the only pipeline that's being built. It's not, there's a huge series of pipelines under the Great Lakes. This is really, we can't, and I think we can't fall into this trap of hyper focusing on one thing. And I would say a big reason why people are not getting as engaged with no DAPL, the Dakota Access Pipeline, is because they have pipeline fatigue after Keystone. And we get hyper-focused on one part of this problem, one manifestation of this problem, and we can't seem to sort of broaden the conversation outside of that. So I do, while I am very sensitive to the plight of our Native American brothers and sisters, I don't want to ethnicize this problem. I always say that. I don't want to make this an ethnic problem the same way I don't want to make police brutality an ethnic problem, because the militarization of the police force and their ability to, run a roughshod over populations is not an ethnic problem.
But it's
a problem that affects.
Ethnicizing the problem is not something that the Native Americans are doing in this case. Ethnicizing the problem is what the media is doing. The media is framing the conversation of things have to be one or the other. Intersectionality is a thing, kids at home, but it can be multiple things, and we can talk about multiple things and how they intersect all in one problem. This is a great case of that. We can talk about Native American rights. We can talk about the right to private land in America. We can also talk about climate change, all in the same discussion about this same issue, because this one issue touches multiple things. But to talk about pipeline fatigue. The only people that seem to not be fatigued are Native Americans. There's a huge pipeline that was just approved up in Canada, so just a few hundred miles north of actually where I live, where this gigantic pipeline is going to be running through. And the only people currently protesting that I know of are Northwest tribes. So Northwest America, not just Northwest the United States, but Northwest American tribes, Native American tribes, are actively going and protesting this. So, I mean, hey.
So I'm going to shift the conversation since we've been talking about manifestations of police brutality and blah blah blah. We should definitely talk about the Keith Lamont Scott. I want to say all of the news surrounding that right now. I know Dave. Huh? Oh, Nick is here as well. Welcome, Nick Nowlin from the to Takedown with Nick. We're going to talk briefly about the surrounding information about Keith Lamont Scott. I know Dave wanted to talk about that. What is going on with that a little bit, Dave? Can you tell us? Bring in Dave.
Let me take off my all my mics here. Well, I wasn't planning on going on camera. I just, it was in the news today, of course, that a Charlotte officer was justified, quote, in what he did on that day, and of course we all remember the video of by Keith's wife, of him approaching him. He was just waiting when they approached, and of course North Carolina is an open carry state, and even the AD couldn't say that he raised the gun, and it was down at his side if there was indeed a gun, because there's still no clear shot of it apparently. But apparently just a look and being told 10 times to drop what they think is a gun is enough to be justified in killing someone. Of course, there was another incident, a video today of a mentally ill man being shot. He had 2 knives and a cane. But this is the go-to. It's the go-to action for cops nowadays, and it all comes down to training. It comes down to culture, but I think it comes down to a Supreme Court decisions too that basically said, "Oh yeah, if you even have this little hint of fear, you can open fire." So that's what's going on with Keith Scott right now, and there are protests going on in North Carolina, and at least we're hearing about them more now. It doesn't seem like we're getting much more justice, but
I mean, I want to draw real quick, and this is really a sad parallel with what's going on. This week, the trial of the terrorist in Charleston starts. Dylan Roof goes on trial. The same week, we find out that yet another police officer is innocent of shooting yet another, as far as we know at least, and I'm going to continue this line, unarmed black man.
Yes,
while an actual terrorist, same state, while an actual terrorist got arrested and was taken to Burger King, now has the chance to cross-examine victims of his own terrorist act.
Whoa. Let's be very clear. I mean, Burger King is not a great place to go. I don't know if that constitutes punishment. They didn't take him to Five Guys, right?
So there goes that sponsorship deal.
Five Guys is good. Sorry. Huh? Five Guys is better than Burger King. So I mean,
oh man, no. I'm confused as to why. Like, it's one thing if these officers are going to trial and being found not guilty by a jury of their peers, which I mean, still
their peers.
There's still plenty of problems with that. That's not even getting to the point of going to trial. Then that's what I find problematic, is if the situation were reversed, or if it wasn't a cop and a citizen, but just 2 citizens, we had the same video, it would go to trial. But because it's an officer, and we're supposed to just take his word as fact, even though we found just a year ago there was a North Carolina officer shooting a man running in the back, but had a very different story between him and his partner that they told the police and the media, and wasn't changed until 72 hours or so later when a video that conflicted with their version of the story came out, and then immediately the officer was arrested.
Well, here's the thing. I know Adair like stressed unarmed black person, but we're in America. You don't have to be unarmed. Unfortunately, you don't have to be unarmed in America to be walking down the street in not most states, but in a large enough number of states, especially in this state, in the case you don't have to be. So whether or not he is armed is irrelevant to this conversation. I will say this. It's a very dangerous mindset to have that if a cop feels threatened in any way, he's able to open fire, especially in a country that has a very deep-seated history of racism, and especially in a country that has so many guns. Because honestly, and I don't want to absolve anyone of the sin of shooting Black people in the streets, because I'm not going to, but I would never become a cop in America. America has too many guns. I would be afraid constantly. I would feel like I had a target on my chest because I'm a cop, because America is full of guns, but I'm a coward. Well, no, I'm not a coward. I'm just,
you're mildly.
I'm self-interested.
I find that is reasonably cautious.
I'm self-interested, and so it comes down to, yes, if I were in that situation, I would shoot first, ask questions last. But you know what? I didn't become a cop.
Yeah, which is like
you knew better than to become a cop is the difference.
Yeah,
I knew better.
A friend of mine makes an argument about that. He says, when you think about how much crime really happens in America, at just a macro level, and what the actual police force actually does about it is very, very little. Like, it seems like they spend a lot of time over policing people that are already law abiding and doing nothing about the criminals, because guess what? At the root of this issue comes down to really the understanding of power. And to be honest with you, criminals actually do have power. And so the police do not do anything about real criminals because they have power. They do stuff about law abiding citizens because they are the lowest common denominator. They are powerless in many respects. And so those people are basically going to be victims of police violence, whereas your criminals oftentimes are not. So he says that police are basically cowards because they do know where the real criminals are and they know what they're doing, but they don't do anything about it. Instead, they want to shoot somebody on a random traffic stop because they're so scared of their lives, from some individual seated in a vehicle. That's what they want to do with their time, rather than actually go and really try to combat the real criminals. And let's not forget that there are people out there who, to them, that badge doesn't mean anything. That badge really doesn't mean anything, but they don't mess with those people because they know that badge doesn't mean anything. They only mess with people who that badge actually means something to. And that's just a really good parallel that he drew for me to help me really understand that police are cowardly. And we really do have to be thinking about why they have as much power as they have, and why things are that way. So that's just something I want to kind of just throw out there.
No, I just wanted to mention quickly on the fear thing that, for instance, in Baltimore, it was one of the bloodiest years that they ever had on record in 2015. Over 300 and some odd people were shot to death. How many of those people were cops? None. So when people think about how dangerous it is, think about the Baltimore residents who lost 300 and some odd people, friends, family, whoever that may have been associated with just walking down the street and participating in day-to-day life in Baltimore, whereas the police, who are so fearful for their lives and in constant danger, none of them were shot to death.
Wait, one second, Brandon, because I want to talk about that specifically. Because we've been talking about this idea that police fear for their lives, right? But here's the thing about it, and here's the crux about police being able to say they fear for their lives, is the fact that the black, and particularly the black male body, has been weaponized through propaganda and pop culture in America. There is this idea that to be a black male, you are inherently violent, and that fear was fed on Nixon, Reagan, Clinton, the Bushes. Even Obama has played into that fear to some extent. I mean, you see this criminalization and this weaponization of the black male body just by existing. Here's another good example of that. What's her name? Amy Schumer's friend, or was it Amy Schumer and Odell Beckham Jr.? He ain't worried about you. That brother's got no qualms about you, but immediately she, as a white woman, is able to make it about herself. And people jump to her defense right away and demonize Odell Beckham Jr. And we see this going back through American history. I got to say about that, folks, it was Rosewood. So, I mean...
Listen, I made a white woman...
I made a point about the origins of the police and the whole slave catcher thing. And, I think that's actually an important aspect to how and why we're where we're at. And moving forward, it's kind of terrifying thinking of Jeff Sessions as Attorney General when this guy is a total incompetent when it comes to cannabis, and who knows what he may or may not try to accomplish regarding recriminalizing or enforcing federal statutes regarding
cannabis. His stance on weed is the most problematic part about Jeff Sessions, Richard. Not the fact that he was too racist to be a judge in America. That, you know how racist it is to be a judge?
Well, the thing is like that we just elected Trump. Being too racist to be a judge is not going to stop him from being an AG.
I'm just saying.
So, but what he can do as AG is he can criminalize every black person with pot in their pocket.
My point. But I want to touch briefly on what Nick said. And I think it's important, and it comes down to, or actually rather talk briefly on what Richard said, but combine both of them. And this is that we're talking about whose life do we value. It's fine. Like we have established as part of American society, American culture, that certain people are supposed to be victims of certain crimes and certain people are not. It's not a surprise. And I always go back to what the Joker said in The Dark Knight. Heath Ledger's Joker. Like, as long as things go according to plan, everything is fine. Black people are supposed to be shot in Baltimore. Like, black people are supposed to be shot in Baltimore. That's just the way things go in America. That is the narrative about the inner city. That is the narrative about the inner city that we have been force fed our entire lives. That's what people see on The Wire. Although The Wire is a great show, obviously. That's what people see in The Wire. That's what the local news tells us about every day. But the idea that a cop might be shot, and when we talk about cop, we always send a picture of the white male might be shot. That goes against the dominant narrative. We value those lives just much more. They're not supposed to live their lives in fear. They are not a legitimate target for violence. While we have positioned black people in America as a legitimate target for violence since the beginning of America, the same way we've positioned Native Americans as a legitimate target for violence since the beginning of America. So it becomes very easy to understand how people get away with these things if you can paint an entire swath of protesters as Native American, or if you can paint an entire swath of gun violence victims as African American, you can get away with whatever you want, because as part of American society, what keeps American society functioning is this idea that certain populations are supposed to be victims. Certain populations don't have the right to live their lives without fear. Certain populations are just more valuable, and we protect them more than we don't protect them. And that's why whenever we talk about gun violence, all we talk about is assault weapon bans. All we talk about is school shootings. All we talk about is on the rare occasion, they are rare occasion, that we have an active shooter walking around a college campus with a gun, because that's the kind of violence that makes suburban house moms, they're also moms probably, like cringe and grip their purse and like in fear for their sons and daughters. When we talk about the actual gun statistics, the actual people who die as a result of police violence, those people are supposed to die. Like, that's just the way our society works. Those people are supposed to die as the victims of American neoliberalism, the American capitalism, American whatever you want to call it. Like those deaths are part of the program. And
I think that kind of shows how apt the naming of Black Lives Matter was to trying to really drill down to the core of the issue. And as you mentioned, it's like that in many people's view, it's okay. These people are supposed to die. It's just how some of the sausage making of America is, sometimes you got to lose a few innocent black people in order to, keep the balance and is what it feels like.
I'm unsure. I'm unsure if they think of it that way. Perhaps that's the way it comes out, but I'm sure to them, to these individuals, they believe that these people that are treated badly by the system of America, it's not necessarily that they're supposed to be, it's that they deserve it. They brought it upon themselves. They are the instruments that bring upon this suffering, and that it's not the system's fault, and it's not some exterior, some external factor or force that's acting upon them. It's something that they bring upon themselves by their own individual actions. And I think that is closer to what it is than it is, just them not valuing our life. I think they believe that while our lives may be of similar value, I think they believe that the quality of our choices bring about these horrible, horrible circumstances. And that may be more to say why they care less. Because to be honest with you, if I believe that someone in some respect deserves or is the person that brings about their own suffering, my empathy for that suffering is diminished.
And I agree with that. And here's the problem. Here's how that happens. That's what happens when you have a society with an intersection of BS meritocracy, but that is also very punitive. Like American society is incredibly punitive, and we subscribe very heavily to the notion that everyone gets what they deserve, and either by through their own hard work and sweat off their brow. When really neither of those things are. I'm sorry, the meritocracy is an illusion, but we are very punitive. So we look forward to punishing people. I mean, everything. Like, a large part of our criminal justice system is all about punishment. People getting what they deserve, and that's what happens. If you can justify punishing people, then you are very harsh on them. We lack empathy, because ultimately, if our society was not punitive but was more interested in rehabilitating them, the idea that they would be shot in the street as opposed to arrested and given due process would not be so palatable. But
which is the reaction you see from other countries that witness these events, or people from other countries.
It's like, if they're criminals, I mean, that's the problem with this sort of labeling of people as criminals. Well, if they're criminals, they deserve to die. And where in other places I would argue, well, if they're criminals, why aren't you putting them in jail or rehabilitating them, or dealing with the structural issues that cause crime in the first place? It's like, well, no, because that would make our society proactive and not reactive. But we're punitive. So we're interested in punishing than we are in rehabilitating anybody. We're not interested in stopping and preventing anything. We're interested in stopping things.
Well, Brandon, we can talk about that later. Right now, we just got to bring him to heel. Okay.
Oh, let's not forget choice. It's an emphasis on choices. Individual choices is what brings about freedom, and the punishment is supposed to be the incentive or disincentive for you to do one thing or another. Ultimately, if choice equals freedom, then your choices have created the situation that you're in, and you had the ability to choose something else that would have generated better outcomes for you. But ultimately, like, they see choice as the ultimate freedom, whereas they don't understand that choices can be coerced by external factors, even controlled, to where you may have very little real choice or real freedom at all.
Well, I want to transition to the next topic, which is the next chapter in the ongoing cycle of grief. I'm sorry, dealing with the grief of the Trump election, and that is the recount. The recount of a few key swing states by, I would say, Jill Stein. Jill Stein's making quite a little bit of bank on this. A lot of attention, a lot of bank, and I believe Hillary Clinton has signed on to be part of this. And I cannot understand what the goal of this thing is. What is the goal? I know what Jill Stein's goal is, because she's raised about $6 million on this.
Yes, yep. Like 6.5.
But has refused the promise that it's going to go towards actually recounting anything. Which
no. That is not what you said. That is it costs like $5 million to go and do the recounts in these states. As to your question as to why being done, this is the same kind of thing in the primary. Numerous statisticians have come out and said, hey, there is a disturbing trend line with these votes. This needs to be looked into. So that's been one of the big rallying cries. Now, it should have been done in the primaries. It should have been done to Hillary Clinton. But that still needs to be done.
That complaint falls on deaf ears, because every problem that occurred in the election, whether it be disenfranchisement of voters in the South, in places like North Carolina, or whether it was the voting machines, or whether it was this sort of bad count, or someone losing the popular vote but winning the presidency, these were things that we have known about for decades. It's like these are things that we would not be doing if I don't know. I guess we'd be doing it no matter who won, but
every vote needs to be audited. Every single presidential, every single I think every vote needs to be audited. Run through the process. You want people in the American electoral process anymore,
and they shouldn't.
With good reason. I was going to say with good reason, but that doesn't mean we should still audit. I think that needs to be just something that happens.
I think that should be structurally part of our voting system, that we do spot check audits just to make sure that there's nothing that seems to skew, and that we can also, both random and then ones that look problematic, take a few highlighted problematic ones and analyze them to see if there's any sort of pattern that we might be able to expand elsewhere. But
I just want to jump here. I just want to jump in real quick, Rich.
Sure, the confidence. Go ahead. Sorry, Dave.
Yeah, no worries. I just want to clarify a couple things. They did a recount. What was it, 2004? I think the Greens did. And that's what got Ohio, got somebody arrested, got somebody charged with voter, election tampering. They got those machines out of Ohio. It caused the ban in California. So the Greens doing this kind of stuff is good for the elections. And the money is not going to go to anywhere but recounts. There's no way. It's a separate FEC thing. It can't be used for anything else other than recounts. And one of the things that came up in the news apparently is because they filed in Michigan now, so they basically started it in all 3 states. And in Michigan, Trump is challenging it. He's actually saying no, it's not legal in Michigan for them to do that, and they have to plead their case coming up in a couple of days. So there's no way the money's going to go to the Green Party other than for this recount. It's all about election protection and trying to expose some of this stuff. And if nothing else, it's going to say to everyone, our fucking elections are fucked up. And we should be recounting this shit, and it ain't working. So
I want to come in on that. This idea that she's fleecing people to run off with this money. I just want to let everybody know, these things are very, very expensive. There was something that said it cost for the recount in Wisconsin alone was almost $2 million. And they were saying, well, why did the numbers change? Well, the numbers changed because the state actually changed, the legal costs and things of that nature actually changed when they start to see the scope and the span of how much it would actually cost for it. So that's really not a valid talking point. All this smear that's going on for this right now, it's just people just being reactionary and not even really taking the time and actually evaluating what's actually going on. And then there's people complaining about motive. Does it really matter what the person's motive is if the end result is a good result? If we have a recount, I don't care why she wants to recount. I really don't. I don't care why she didn't do it yesterday. I didn't care why they didn't do it 10 years ago. I don't care why they chose today or why they chose this. All that stuff is besides the point. And the reason why, because what's most important is because the potential to break the crack, to crack the belief that our elections are done properly, fairly, for the majority of people. So people who are all naysaying, all that stuff, to break the illusion that our election system is infallible is more important than all this emotional reaction. I think that's really what that is. And it's not even logical on the face of it.
Let me play devil's advocate just for a moment and ask, since it seems as though I agree with the idea that the recount should be happening regardless, and I don't really care why she's doing it and if she's getting a bunch of emails and future potential outreach opportunities, whatever. That I think it seems to me is mostly just a reasonable amount of 2 birds with 1 stone kind of issue. But my question is originally it didn't have, I think it maybe had 1 state party on the page. And then later, I think it was Ohio, maybe the Green Party state page was added there as opportunity or places for you to be able to donate up to $10,000. But then since then, those have been removed. So what would be now? I'm torn on exactly what's going to happen. I don't think that they thought that they would ever raise enough money to actually do the recounts. They expected maybe $500,000 to $1 million. They put it in the pocket and you actually use it towards, securing the vote or establishing to make sure that the vote is accurate, but not necessarily in such of a recount or something like that, but by pushing legislation or something along those lines. But why did those state pages disappear off of there? And with
incompetence,
$10,000.
Yeah, incompetence. This shit is complicated, dude.
Plan it out correctly.
It's
they decided probably they were going to have more than one channel for the money to be funneled, and then they decided no, we're going to all have it go to a common place instead of having it go to a collection of places, then funnel to the same place in the end. That's all that was.
I just want to point out that I'm not against the recount at all, and I was being, a bit tongue in cheek when I said that she's going to run away with the money and, build the greenhouse somewhere.
But that's what people are saying.
I want to touch on something because we talk about
before. I will say one thing. I agree. I guess my larger point is that I don't know what it will actually take to make people understand how messed up our system actually is, even if it functioned perfectly. In terms of, let's say, voting machines, no one was disenfranchised. The lines worked properly. It was done on a Saturday or with a national holiday. Criminals weren't. the formerly incarcerated were not disenfranchised in certain states. There were no voting ID laws. What happened with someone winning the popular vote and losing election could still happen. Like none of those things actually prevent what occurred from occurring. And at a certain point, I also don't want this to become a talking point for the people who are still wearing the "I'm with her" shirts and embarrassing themselves, because that is I don't think they understand where the rest of America was, because like I'm sure everyone's like seeing people who are still rocking the button. You're like, oh my God, no, you don't understand. But no. My whole point is that, like, I don't want this to become a rallying cry where people can sort of absolve the DNC and Hillary Clinton of her very, very poor campaign and her very, very weak candidacy in general. So no, but go ahead.
Quickly, I just want to say
that shouldn't even be an opportunity, because the same way that she was robbed, supposedly, we don't even know if she was robbed. More than likely, she probably got votes that she didn't deserve either, for all we know, when the actual recount goes down, right? But
as soon as it came out,
I don't think it should absolve her, because she made it to a primary that she shouldn't have made it through some very, very strange techniques and all of that, just to say that she won under some rules that are very strange. And even under those rules, there were shenanigans that were going on. So, I don't think it should absolve her at all. And the "I'm with Hillary" button, you know what? Let them wear their "I'm with Hillary" button. I want them to wear that button. They supported that person, ride or die, and she lost. I really like that. It's the same thing with these people saying, "I'm still Sanders." Look, Sanders is gone. He lost. It's over. By hook or by crook.
To that note,
real quick, because I want to take this back before we move forward. I want to take this back before we move forward. There's been two things that have been brought up. So one, we don't know what the actual vote's going to end up being. I need somebody, Dave, if you can, or someone in the chat wants to do this as well, double check this. But I had been seeing articles saying that there was something like 5,000 votes that had been for Trump that couldn't be accounted for in Wisconsin. Immediately after this recount was called for, Wisconsin was like, "Oh wait, we've got some funny business with 5,000 votes." So if somebody could double check that to make sure I'm not tripping, that would be much appreciated. But we want to talk about reactionary to the recount. Donald J. Trump, the president-elect of the United States, got on Twitter immediately afterwards and was like, "I actually won the national popular vote too, if you deduct the millions of illegal votes Hillary got." Like, what the hell?
I think
being reactionary? Can we just say the president-elect of the United States got on Twitter, y'all? Got on Twitter to talk about he actually won, but Hillary had millions of illegal voters. This is an issue. That is a damn problem.
Technically, if every person who President Obama deported back to Mexico voted for Hillary Clinton, she probably would have actually won the election. So I mean,
that's actually my third point, because now you reminded me, this electoral college mess. I'm torn, guys. I don't like it, but let's be realistic. The majority of the United States lives in with a very few populated areas.
So
I mean, think about the rest of the country. I don't like that my vote's devalued, but I also don't think it would be fair if New York, Los Angeles, Miami, Dallas metro area, Houston, Seattle, like if we determine the national elections for everybody, essentially, if you don't live in those areas, you're not picking the president. I don't think that's quite fair, but I also don't think it's fair that someone in Montana, their one vote is worth something like 100,000 people in California. There's got to be some kind of middle ground.
I've never really understood that math though, because there's less than 10 million people in New York City. There's not that many people.
Not necessarily the city. We're talking county. There's large population, like large swaths of the American populace live in very particular counties. Like there's
a good map out there that shows the red and blue at basically the county level.
But here's the thing. It's not like we have a system that exists now that is in any way that's countering that. That's not that. It doesn't fix that problem. It just creates the opposite.
I didn't say that. I didn't say it did.
I'm saying something that we have right now just creates the opposite problem, where people are pandering to states with less people in them simply because they are swing states. So it's not as though okay, well, because we have the electoral college system, they are big sweeping messages, and all of these people out there are, like they're trying to have broad appeal. No, they just abandon the states that they can't win and focus on 9 states that they might be able to win. And so I don't know what the solution to the larger problem you're discussing is, which is what candidates would be running to be the president of all of America, not simply the president of little key pockets of America. But the electoral college doesn't really solve that problem the way it might seem to. It just creates a new problem.
The electoral college is an issue. Like, it's bullshit. It's a bad system. What we have is garbage. Period. But we've got to work to finding some kind of middle ground, because you're right. They shouldn't focus on Ohio, Michigan, Virginia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania, and that's it. Because, well, these are the states that in Colorado, these are the swing states, and the entire left coast of the United States. Oh, well, we don't care about y'all, right? But at the same time, they shouldn't just worry about our super large metropolitan areas. They shouldn't just campaign in the Atlanta area. They shouldn't just campaign in the Seattle area, the LA area, the New York area. They shouldn't do that. Where they're the most heavily populated counties. So we've got to come up with a system between the two.
It's like, I'm not convinced that would actually occur, because there's not enough people in LA, New York City, or you would have to campaign in every major metropolitan area. Like you could not just simply go to New York.
You California, could easily set a cap. You could set a metropolitan area cap based on the number of residents and say, if I win in these areas big enough, I win the election. Like, sure, you're still going to campaign in other places. Hillary Clinton came to Washington. She knew she was going to win Washington. She still came. So, I don't think that the system changes if you get rid of the electoral college. I think it's the same kind of thing. You see a shift from swing states to heavily populated areas. Very specific, very heavily populated. But even then, we still might get left out on the left coast because we are so doggone liberal, which I like that we're liberal. I just don't like that we don't get listened to. Like, our problems don't matter.
I want to call the left coast the McLiberals, because I don't know, as liberal as it seems, you got a lot of conservative policies over there. So
you have a lot. We have a lot of conservatives.
Is what I would say.
But here's the thing: like Washington, you win Pierce County, King County, and Snohomish County, the three most liberal counties in the state. You win the statewide, like you win statewide. Like, that's just how it breaks down. So that's why Washington's got that liberal idea, that liberal brand to it, because our three most populous counties are decidedly liberal. King County, again, we've got Shama Sawant, one of my personal favorite people ever. Like, I think she's great. I think we could be better.
I don't know if you noticed last time, Pierce County was remarkably close this election.
Yes, it was. That is actually one of the things that is being talked about during reorg. So y'all folks out in Washington, get a part of reorg. There's a state listening tour going down, because Washington, the Democrats, even at the local level in this last election, completely dropped the damn ball.
Well, again, I just want to point out that just being blue doesn't necessarily make you liberal.
Yeah.
It's true.
Like
as an example at the state convention,
red or blue. Like there's a blue state that I'm thinking of that's incredibly conservative, and that state is Rhode Island, and even Connecticut. Those are very conservative states, but they vote blue. It's like, just because your state is blue doesn't make it liberal, True. And I'll even say here in Texas is very red. We have blue areas.
Where?
These blue areas are very conservative. Houston is a very conservative city. The suburbs here are very, very conservative.
No, I mean, like, what's blue?
Crazy.
What the hell is blue in Texas?
Well, Harris County, Austin, San Antonio, those are generally blue areas, and then all down in the valley is very blue.
Really?
But even El
good luck
Paso,
driving through Texas to get to that part.
But even inside these blue pockets inside of Texas, those Democrats are very, very conservative. Like, just mentioning that the state should that the government should do anything to help people is even taboo in a Democratic side. So that you'll find even them, pushing about, well, we should limit regulation or we should cut the public sector pensions. Like, our mayor in our city, one of his biggest signature achievements when he got elected is that he cut the public sector pensions. So these pensions were promised to these people that worked here for the city of Houston, and he decides that the city would actually raise a bond for $1 billion of what's owed to them, but then 2.5 they got to take that cut.
Damn.
And I was like, so you raised 1/3 of what they should have already. 1/3 of what they should have already gotten. Gratis, right? Because you can't cut them. You cut double what you gave them, basically. It was like 1 to 2. So they took twice as many cuts as they got what they should have been owed. And I think that's one of his signature achievements, saying, we had to solve this problem. This is the best we can get because a Republican would do even worse. And that's horrible logic. But that's the type of Democrat that you have down here. That's the type of Democrat that you run into in Connecticut. That's what you're running into in Rhode Island. That's what you're running into other blue areas.
Hobson's Democrats, because that's what they're offering you, is the Hobson's choice of, you can take this little bit on the table or you can have nothing at all. Like,
and I just want to point out that we're using blue as kind of like a general term, but we all recognize that being blue does not make you liberal.
Yeah. Well, speaking of being blue, let's talk about Keith Ellison's platform for the DNC, because I know a lot of people were sort of complaining, and by a lot of people I mean me and Nick, that he didn't really. People wanted to give him a blanket pass because he's Muslim and he's black and he's just not Debbie Wasserman Schultz or Donna Brazile, and like he must be doing something great. And so now he actually had the platform out. He probably had one out before, we just hadn't read it yet. I'm gonna admit to that. And so now we know what he sort of plans on doing he's running on, planning on doing as head of the DNC. And I don't know if everyone here has read it. Has anyone here not read it?
I've got finals next week, so.
Okay, so.
Pull it up now.
Nick, I know you read it, Nick, and I know you hated it. So why did you not like the platform that he's running on?
Oh, it's not that I hated it. It just didn't tell me anything. It was just a lot of words on paper. I mean, and I don't mean he didn't say, well, actually, I do mean that. I'm going to say, I don't mean that those words don't mean anything, so to speak. Of course, words have definitions and things of that nature, but I just didn't see those words on that paper correlating to any type of policy or action that I would like to see from the DNC as a commitment that it's actually changing. So I saw some words on paper and it just didn't amount to anything to me. And maybe it's because I've read a lot and I've heard these same words mentioned a lot. Like one word that stuck out to me is they kept saying something about a 50-state strategy. And I'm like, okay, 50-state strategy. I've heard that before, and it amounted to nothing. So like that doesn't mean a change for the DNC, so to speak. That means, okay, you're going to try to campaign in different states. What does that mean as far as you changing the orientation of the DNC? I really just feel like that really didn't mean anything. It's just words that they like to put on paper like a talking point almost.
Real quick, guys, as an aside, Dave just posted a link on our Slack. The Palmer Report headline is 3 Wisconsin precincts revised vote totals after caught padding Donald Trump's numbers. So 3 precincts admit they gave him imaginary votes.
And is that verified? I don't want to spread rumors.
Well, let's pull it up more, but this is something I've been hearing about for quite a while. So I want to say, yeah, actually. But let me pull it up and see if I can get the full article for you guys real quick. But to my knowledge, this is a real thing.
So let me just jump in here, guys.
An error.
Real quick. The couple of sources on this, they're part of that, I think part of that sort of fake news thing. So I'm digging down a little bit, and what I was able to find is some local news reporting on this. And it basically, what they're talking about is essentially human error on the night, tabulating wrong numbers in a calculator. Those numbers get adjusted, basically on the fly during the counting. And it's just something, I think in this report it says, the quote is, I can find it here. Canvass is conducted by county clerks throughout the state. We are on the positive. That's not where it is. Oh, here it is. After the poll, closing out things, they want to wrap it up, and sometimes human error in reporting those numbers just occurs. So basically, they've adjusted their tallies based on just, adding up, whether that's the numbers coming out of the machine or people with, entering numbers in books and uploading the wrong numbers. But that's where those adjustments came from. Everything that's there, that was not recent. That was basically right afterwards. So, take that for what it may be. Now, I think one of the other issues with these machines is the optical scan. Sometimes, if they're calibrated wrong, they're not going to read them right, and they're not going to read your overvotes and your undervotes correctly. And that's part of what this visual inspection is supposed to be about in Minnesota. So, take that.
I think a lot of times, everybody's got these extraneous, long-winded, very, very convoluted ways that it could be done. And I think we need to start applying like a little bit more simple solutions. Like these things run through computers, and computers have algorithms, and you can write an algorithm to do anything. You just can. And I think we should consider that, what election justice recommended was that we use hand counted paper ballots in an open system, scanned and put online somewhere where everybody can view the votes and count up to make sure the numbers match up. And then individuals actually are given a number, and their ballot is in there, and they can go back and see what they count. Any outside groups actually recount what's scanned in. It matches the vote totals. That way you eliminate a lot of the need for like electronic hassling and things of that nature. And it also should be a fully open, like an open source system, meaning like people are able to look in there and see what the code shows and all that. They may not be able to change things and manipulate stuff, but it's all open to the public, what's being used and how it's being done. And the counting process is all open to the public. Right now, we just don't have that. And as many times as I've tried to explain to people that literally we don't know what happens once that vote is cast on that machine, where it goes, how it's tallied, who did what, it's gone. It's there's no trace of it. There needs to be, a paper trail. And that's why hand counted paper ballots put somewhere where it can be verified, chain of custody, open recount process. All those things are things that need to be in place. And these are things that are in place in other countries that make their systems both trustworthy and highly verifiable. And we just don't have that here in America.
So I think I wanted to touch back a little bit on what Keith Ellison's platform mentioned, and you talked about the 50-state strategy. And I think part of what's missing is, as you said, is the actual strategy part, like beyond some rhetoric about, well, let's appeal to rural folks and hardworking Americans. And I mean, nobody ever talks about impoverished Americans anymore because fuck them. But as far as just hardworking Americans, that we need a fundamental revamp of our political engagement from elementary all the way up through adulthood. And that's really what it's going to take. It's going to take engaging the 47% of people that didn't vote and getting them to participate. It, to me, seems like rather than trying to convince people that disagree with you to agree with you, you could get the people that agree with you and just don't think it's worth voting for you to actually get out and vote. Well, it's a generational process. It's not something that you fix in one term or over one election period.
Well, I don't think that suits the interests of either party.
Of course not.
I don't think that either party is interested in having 100% of the.
My phone is not hold a charge. Right.
I don't think that either party is interested, especially not Republicans, definitely not Democrats. They're not interested in having an open end or transparent voting process, because a lot of our voting relies on people being as uninformed as possible. A lot of our voting, our political culture relies on people making very, very very, very quick last-minute decisions about who to vote for.
Well, again,
our voting
when I say open and verifiable, I'm just meaning whatever you cast on that vote is verifiable and is for sure being captured, and there's no area where there's no eyes on stuff where people can manipulate things. If they want to hide stuff or manipulate it, they have to do it in plain sight, and that's much more difficult.
Oh no, I agree. I say I would love to see that, but my point was that I don't think Democrats want that either. And so this comes down to what you said.
People making a split decision at the last minute. I was like, well, that's kind of it. Really doesn't matter what decision they make, right?
I don't know. My point is like the reform of our not only electoral system, but also our electoral, our political culture is nothing that benefits the power structure that we have right now. Neither party wants an informed populace voting. Neither party wants 100% of the people to know 100% of the issues and be thinking about who they're going to vote for 4 years in advance. That doesn't really suit anyone's agenda insofar that.
Again,
as we're into our last 15 minutes, so I just want to quickly make the point of that. I think that you're right in that in the long term, in the long run, that neither party wants that for the reasons that you outlined. But I think short term, and this is how the parties tend to think, you could appeal to at least the left by suggesting that of the 47% of people who don't vote, more of them are lean left than lean right.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's in their immediate benefit to do it. But yeah, I agree that in the long run, that they don't want an open, informed process, because that makes it harder to both. Because I mean, Democrats have been caught cheating at the local level on voting, with voting machines and various other things as well, and so any corruption in the voting system is maybe not equally shared on both sides, but exists on both sides.
Yeah, it's not a partisan issue, but I feel like our political system would be very different if the process were open. I think the outcomes would be different. I think initiatives that nobody would have thought would have passed would start passing. I think that the outcomes in these elections would be a very, very different thing.
If you just open it up so that, if you just do a document dump of all this information, I don't think that necessarily necessitates that people will be tuned in, and
I'm not
be
saying
hard to
they'll vote differently. I believe they are voting differently from what the outcomes we have been presented with. I believe that the vote is actually very different.
Well, like for instance, with the DAPL action, we see police brutality against people on their own land, essentially, and rather than the people that were out at Bundy's ranch coming out and saying, you know what, this is wrong. Like, it's not that they don't see that it's the same thing going on. It's just they don't care.
I think with elections that'll be different. I think elections is one of those things that people do hold sacred, and I think what prevents us from really addressing any issues with the election system is who's complaining about it, who is disenfranchised, and who's not. Like, people of color and poor people being disenfranchised through the system is not problematic to people who are voting against their interests to begin with. So, they don't really care so much. But if their interests were being manipulated or cheated, it would be and then there's also the people that just believe that, they live in the illusion and that the outcomes of the system are good, and that there's no reason to question them no matter what. And there's no evidence to say that is the way it is, but that is the illusion that's been put forth. That is the illusion that's been forth. I really do believe that people want the process to be open and verifiable and accurate. I just believe some people think it's accurate the way it is. And that's in stark contrast with reality.
I know. I actually something to read. I'm gonna go back. I definitely and absolutely agree with what Nick is saying, and I think that the evidence that came out of Democratic primary, in terms of discrepancy between exit polling and the actual outcome, should be enough for everyone to really think hard about the accuracy of our electoral system. And election justice has brought, in any real country, the discrepancy between the exit polling and the actual, votes counted, let's say, would lead to a mandatory recount everywhere, because it's just so wildly different. But it's like Nick said, I think people sort of have a set it and forget it kind of voting mentality now. They vote and they go, okay, well, I voted, it's going to be counted. My vote counts or something. Either it counts or doesn't count, but you know what I mean? It's going to be counted. And they don't realize how broken our electoral system is.
Well, part of the problem is the perpetuation of the myth that the primary had anything to do with being an election. That's not what they're actually supposed to be. And Republicans just kind of shot themselves in the foot by not having a measure like super delegates, or by being able to push out their insurgent candidate. But the primaries were only supposed to be a parade to parade around the candidate that the establishment chose, and to get attention and to rally up support, build fundraising networks, to do all those types of things. It wasn't actually intended to sort out and pick which candidate they were going to run. That's a story we've been told.
Okay. And on that point, I'll agree with that. But I'm always about, diminishing concentrations of power. Like, and I use the word power, and I know it gets really deep and all that, and I'm going to kind of stay away from it, because a lot of times many people don't really understand what power is or what it means. But when you have the ability to enforce your will on the world, regardless of other people's choices, that's really like a measure of power, through various means and all that stuff. But ultimately, we have a situation where a group of individuals or a party, which acts as an instrument for another group of people that are behind the scenes. We tend to think that politicians are actually the people that are having the power, when really they're just an instrument for something else, right? but these parties are able to be the instruments by which the powerful are enforcing their will on everybody else via various means, whether it's propaganda, the belief of choice, whatever that may be. But we're in a situation now where power is concentrated and it needs to be distributed.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's that belief of choice that is so fundamental to keeping people, in chains. Like that belief that you put that this wasn't a trap. You put yourself here. You made the choice that led to your decision, and now you have to accept it. And I mean, it makes people, I would argue, makes people more amenable to horrible things because they feel like, well, I made the choice. Like I had a real choice. Like I chose between President Obama and President Mitt Romney, and it makes them defend that choice. Where people know, and I think that if people really understood how little choice they actually had, they would be less inclined to defend the choices they make or choices that they didn't make. They'd be less inclined to defend President Obama's policies if they realized how little choice they had between him and between the outcome of what would have been a Mitt Romney presidency. If they realized how little effect their choice actually had on the power structure. That for all intents and purposes, a lot of things that you are supporting would have happened regardless of whether you made your vote or not. Regardless of which one you voted for, it would still be occurring to some degree. And this is more of an issue of degrees of evil and not evil. But no one's going to actively say they voted for evil. I mean, a few people will, the lesser evil, but I think most people are thinking of it as a good. I've been to a lot of people who during the electoral cycle, I mean, during the election, but prior to it going on, they weren't touting that Hillary Clinton is evil, and I'm going to vote for evil. They were touting she's good. Look at all these good things about her. And I was like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, just accept that you're supporting evil. He's like, being evil is great, man. Like, you get to dress in all black and choke people with your mind. That's baller. That's baller.
I think Brandon caught me smirking at his point earlier. But the reason why I was smirking is that people have to make a choice reminded me of the Matrix, and I'm sure people have various opinions on that. But triggered in my head.
The easiest way to get someone to accept awful things is to make them think they had a choice in the first place. And if you think you made your agency had an effect on the outcome, it's much easier to accept it. I would make that argument. Like if you think that you either did something good or you had some effect on the outcome, you accept it better.
Slot machines are a great example of that.
It's the illusion that
they switched from having a poll, like just a thing to pull down, to having as much interaction as possible so that you feel like your choices are influencing the likelihood of you winning money when it's all digitally chosen.
And this goes back to Nick's point on power. It's like if you give people the illusion that they have power in the system, they will defend that system. They will defend that choice. Where if you strip away that illusion, you say, hey, you know what? You never had a choice really between anything. It's like you never had a choice. And you can point out all of the little things you have a choice on. Like you can point out the fact that, you had a choice with whether or not you think gay marriage should be legal. You had a choice on whether or not you thought, you think people should be allowed to say the N-word in public. You had a choice, blah, blah, blah. But if you point out how many things you did not have a choice on, like how many things the choice was a joke, the choice was an illusion, it would really upset people's notion that they have power in their life and they have power over the way the world actually works. People want to feel like they have power.
Yeah, I don't know where that comes from, the belief that everybody wants to believe that they are significant and that they are larger than what they are in the grand scheme, right? And I'm not saying, lives are insignificant or individual people are all insignificant. I'm just saying, your individual experience or the things that you do every day in certain aspects, when you're looking at it from at a certain level, it doesn't matter. To you it matters, but beyond that, it really doesn't matter very much. And I think that that's something we all have to kind of grapple with as human beings, that in the grand scheme we are insignificant. In a grander scheme, if you're looking at it from a cosmic level or something like that, human beings, we're just one dot.
And see,
especially if you look at time too, like just in the time of Earth's existence, we're like a second fraction of a second of its existence. So we're not that significant in the grand scheme of things. Go ahead.
I'm gonna share personal things about myself. As someone who is very self-interested and very vain and arguably like a narcissist with sociopathic tendencies, I don't find myself struggling with issues of power or being a control freak the way I see a lot of other people doing in their lives, where it's like they struggle with this notion that their every decision is a matter of life and death. And I'm just like, honestly, most things that occur are outside of my, power, and I'm okay with that. I've accepted that. And the things that I can control, I put a lot of focus into those things. But stuff like, whether Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump won, like that was just like, I never believed I had any control over it. I was entirely dispassionate about it because and I didn't make decisions. So I was like, hey, you know what? No matter what I do in this situation, there's going to be an asshole in the White House. And so
I think we're just about done on time, so I just quickly wanted to get some plugs in there. If you enjoyed the conversation we were having here, make sure to check us out at projectsanity.org or Project Sanity YouTube channel. And I think there's going to be, I saw something about we might be streaming on Facebook as well. So if you're watching us there, go ahead and check us out and make sure to subscribe to the Benjamin Dixon channel. And
absolutely
subscribe to Project Sanity if you would, and check out the Takedown with Nick Nowlin. Go ahead. Okay.
Yeah,
and
Benjamin Dixon's going to be on Facebook too. Benjamin Dixon's going to be on Facebook as well. If you're watching us on Facebook, make sure to check out the Benjamin Dixon Show. Up right after us. Going to be on at Ben's going to be on at 9. He's going to talk about a lot of things. I don't know what they are yet, so we'll all find out together. This has been Project Sanity. Thank you for watching. Give say thank you, Gary. Don't be rude.
Thank you. Good luck.